Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As a member for Goldstein, I'm proud to be able to stand and speak on this piece of legislation, which is urgent, necessary and important for the country, because we have to make sure that the cosy relationship that sits at the heart of many of the financial institutions of this country, including those superannuation funds that have a very clubby relationship with insurance, is broken apart, because the focus of this legislation is not in the best interests of the shadowy forces that sit at the heart of the modern Labor Party. It's actually standing up for consumers, for Australians, for those young Australians in particular who go out, work hard, want to get ahead, and particularly at the early stage of their career when they might have gone through school or university and have a low superannuation balance, at the moment are having it corroded and eaten away for the self-interests of those people who run the funds that they're members of, often without their formal approval, as a default option, attached to their employment conditions, where they are denied choice. Now, we know full well, Deputy Speaker, why those sitting on the other side of this chamber are so hell-bent to oppose this simple reform. We also know why they're so hell-bent in stopping any other type of reform in this space. Because at the moment, while we see the superannuation balances of young Australians eaten away by fees, you only need to look at the nefarious agenda of those who are enjoying and making a meal of it. And they're the people sitting on the other side of this chamber. And their allies and their friends, and they're out there defending them at every single opportunity against the interests of Australians. And they ought to be ashamed of themselves. And that's what this legislation's about. It's actually about standing up for young Australians and their interests against institutional interests. And what's the response of the opposition and their mates to anybody who stands up and questions or challenges this system? Well, we only need to look at the behaviour of a former member of this place who now sits atop of the patronage network of Industry Super Australia and IFM Investors, Greg Combay, when members of this chamber and in the Senate dared question whether the current policy settings are right. That's all they did. They questioned whether the current policy settings are right. The response was that they were going to run an aggressive and unrelenting campaign to remove them. What a former member of this place and head of Industry Super talked about, an organisation that by law has money taken from the wages of Australians and is then given to them to control. If anybody questions that relationship, their response is to use the money that is by law forced to be given to them to campaign against anybody who questions that cosy relationship. Deputy Speaker, that is not the way that you have public policy debate. That is not public policy. To me, it looks much more like an extortion racket, a bullying campaign of anybody who dare question their blood flow and their bloodstream for survival, simply because they want to remain in control of people's superannuation funds for their own benefit. And that's what this bill brings so nakedly and clearly out, and why those who are on the opposition are so hell-bent in stopping it. Because they would rather enjoy the benefits of what they can compel to take from people's wages for themselves than allow young Australians to be in the best position they can to save for their retirement. It is absolutely despicable. We know the Productivity Commission estimates more than $3 billion would be invested rather than eaten away by insurance premiums if insurance and superannuation was opt-in rather than opt-out for people with low balances under 25s and on inactive accounts, according to the minister responsible. And to think that they would oppose this simply because it messes up their club and their cosy arrangements, where they sit in this chamber and vote for themselves and their mates, is despicable. It's the height of vested interests that they're seeking to prosecute and pursue. And that's why their squeals are so loud on these and other issues, and why it won't stop. Because this bill will stop millions of Australians falling prey to powerful sectional interests in the superannuation and insurance industry. $300 million is currently being siphoned away from workers' retirement savings in the form of absurd income, life and various premiums, simply for those people, for the benefit of the funds and against the consumers. That is, premiums for insurance that the overwhelming majority of recipients neither need nor, in many cases, want or certainly even knew that they had. The cosy relationship between super funds and life insurers comes to the detriment of workers, particularly those, as I've said, who are young and those who have re-entered the workforce, who may not have significant balances. And we know full well that many of the people have the lowest superannuation balances because of absences in the workplace are women who have gone off to raise children. And to think that they would be targeted and disadvantaged by the Labor Party, by the opposition, so they can help themselves against the interests of Australian women is despicable. The nonsensical opposition by the ACTU and their affiliate unions shows just how much this bill attacks their self-interest. In their submission, and I'm saying Labor's self-interest and the ACTU's self-interest, in their submission, the ACTU makes the distinction that these changes will disproportionately have an impact on those who are returning to the workforce and, of course, on young Australians. And I would have thought that strengthening the case for stopping young Australians and women returning to the workplace, having their retirement savings being swept away and into the line of rent seekers, would have been a good thing. In fact, ordinarily, if those opposite weren't enjoying the fruits and benefits of it, they would be arguing in favour of reform, but not when they seek to enjoy the benefits themselves. They've tied themselves in not trying to come up.
To take a seat for a moment, the member for Whitlam has a point of order.
Chair, I've been very patient with the member for Goldstein, but time and time again, throughout the Section 90, Clause 90 of the Standing Orders, he's reflecting upon the motives of the members on this side of the chamber. Highly disorderly. I've been very, very patient with him, but he persists in doing it, and I'd ask that you call him to order.
Thank you. Can the member for Goldstein, in continuation, please observe the standing orders? Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, I believe I respect the point you've made, but I also believe at every point I have only highlighted the facts. And this is the fundamental problem with this legislation. This is the problem with the opposition's opposition to this legislation. And they have been quite comfortable, by the way, Deputy Speaker, in imputing the motives of the people on this side of this chamber. And there's been nobody more egregious than the member who just stood up to try and call me to order, who has made nicknames and slurs and thrown people's motivations around. And now to get up into this chamber and to attack somebody else for pointing out some obvious truths is the most hypocritical act that one could possibly take. The idea that opt-out insurance is necessary to provide workers an affordable and comprehensive insurance packages which they may not otherwise afford is absurd. Whether it's forced upon you or not, the affordability of superannuation-derived insurance premium does not change. Opt-in means that there is simply more transparency. It means that people have a choice. But it does mean that the rivers of gold that go out the door of people's superannuation policies to buy insurance policies they never wanted, they never sought and they never asked for will end. And the people who will lose will be the institutional interests, and the people who will win will be Australians. Union and industry lobbyists pull out all stops when they rent seek, but there is one special interest group in this parliament that the opposition should actually be listening to. They don't have a mass organisation, a money or a megaphone. They only have representatives and they sit on this side of this chamber. And when we fail them, they have no voice. And they are those who get up every day, who work hard, who sacrifice, who save to put themselves in the best position to be independent and, of course, to make sure they have a secure retirement. And the Liberal Party was explicitly founded to give these Australians political representation and a voice. And that is why we will not be silent on this issue and the many other issues that come up. Because we know in a choice between the rights of the individual and the freedom to choose against the established entrenched interests of the union movement and their acolytes and mates, that we are always on the right side of history in standing up for people and their freedom. Deputy Speaker.